Nicole Johnson never imagined that granting a prisoner's last wish would cost her everything, or ignite a love so forbidden it burned. Lee Hyun-jin, a devastatingly composed Korean CEO serving a death sentence with 90 days left, had one final request that would shatter every boundary between them. She was supposed to say no, maintain professional distance, never let herself feel the dangerous heat between a policewoman and a condemned man. But the moment this refined former executive looked at her through reinforced glass of Cell 23, his dark eyes burning with desperate intensity as he whispered, "Please." Something inside her ignited. His last wish became her obsession. Their stolen moments became her addiction. Their connection became something neither could control. This was forbidden, impossible, career-ending. But as desire blurred into something deeper and more dangerous, Nicole realized his last wish had already captured more than her heart, and the powerful forces that put him on death row were now hunting the woman who dared to love him. If you're already hooked, hit subscribe now, because things are about to get dangerously intense. Nicole Johnson's hands trembled as she stood outside Captain Harris's office at Dallas State Prison, staring at the closed door like it might swallow her whole. 3 years she'd worked here, 3 years of perfect evaluations, 0 incidents, respect from every inmate and officer alike. And now, this, a mandatory meeting at 4:47 p.m. on a Friday, 15 minutes before her shift ended. She knocked twice. "Come in." His voice carried that edge she'd learned to recognize over the past 6 months, ever since she'd turned down his dinner invitation for the 3rd time. The door clicked shut behind her. Harris sat behind his massive oak desk, fingers steepled, eyes tracking her movement across the room like a predator watching prey. He was 48, silver at the temples, wearing the kind of expensive watch that had no place in corrections work. "Sit down, Nicole." She remained standing. "Sir, is this about the incident report from C Block? Because I followed protocol exactly. This isn't about C Block." He stood, walked around the desk, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Too close. "This is about your future here, about opportunities you've been refusing." Her stomach dropped. "Sir, you're talented, Nicole. Beautiful, smart, disciplined." His hand found the small of her back, and every muscle in her body locked. "I could make things very good for you here. Promotions, better shifts, assignments that actually lead somewhere. All you have to do is stop being so rigid." Nicole stepped away from his touch, her voice steady despite the rage burning through her chest. "Captain Harris, with all due respect, I'm here to do my job, nothing more." His expression shifted. The false warmth drained away, replaced by something cold and vindictive. "You should think very carefully about your career trajectory, Officer Johnson. This prison runs on relationships, cooperation, and right now, you're making things very difficult for yourself." "I understand, sir." She turned toward the door. "Nicole." His voice stopped her. "One more thing. You're being transferred. Effective Monday, Ironwood maximum security, 6 hours north. Death row unit. Congratulations on your new assignment." The world tilted. Death row. The most dangerous posting in the state, the unit with the highest officer assault rate, the place where careers went to die. "Sir, I never requested," wasn't a request, was a need. They're short-staffed, and your particular skill set is required there. His smile was razor-sharp. "Maybe a few months at Ironwood will teach you the value of being more cooperative." Dismissed. Nicole walked to her car in a daze, 6 hours away. Death row, because she wouldn't sleep with her boss. She sat in the parking lot, forehead pressed against the steering wheel, and let herself cry for exactly 3 minutes. Then she wiped her face, started the engine, and drove home to pack. If Harris thought this would break her, he was wrong. But what neither of them knew was that this transfer would lead Nicole into something far more dangerous than either could imagine, a conspiracy that would cost her everything, force her to question every rule she'd ever followed, and introduce her to a man whose death sentence would become her own. The story was just beginning, and it would get so much darker before the light returned. If you're already feeling the tension, hit that subscribe button now, because what happens next will leave you breathless, and you'll want to make sure you don't miss a single moment of this journey. Ironwood Maximum Security Prison looked like something out of a nightmare. Nicole pulled up to the gate at 6:45 a.m. Monday morning, her Toyota barely registering against the massive concrete walls that rose 30 feet high, topped with coiled razor wire that glinted in the early light. Guard towers punctuated each corner, and the whole structure seemed designed to crush hope before you even stepped inside. She showed her transfer papers to the gate guard, a heavy-set man who barely glanced at them before waving her through. The parking lot was half empty this early, but the building itself hummed with that particular energy Nicole had learned to recognize, the sound of hundreds of men contained against their will, anger and desperation pressed into concrete and steel. The administration building was separate from the cell blocks, thank God. Nicole found human resources, signed 17 different forms, and received her new badge, uniform assignments, and locker number. The HR officer, a tired-looking woman named Patricia, walked her through the basics. "Death row is cell block D," Patricia said, sliding a map across the desk. 47 inmates currently. You'll be on rotation with Officers Wade, Chen and Morrison. Wade's your senior officer. He'll show you the protocols. Something flickered in Patricia's expression when she said Wade's name, a warning Nicole couldn't quite read. "Any particular concerns I should know about?" Nicole asked. Patricia hesitated, then seemed to think better of whatever she was about to say. "Just keep your head down, follow the rules, and don't get too friendly with anyone, staff or inmates." 20 minutes later, Nicole was being escorted through 3 separate security checkpoints, each door clanging shut behind her with the finality of a coffin closing. The air grew heavier with each step deeper into the facility. By the time she reached cell block D, her mouth was dry and her heart rate had kicked up despite her best efforts to stay calm. The door opened and Officer Marcus Wade looked up from the security desk. He was tall, broad-shouldered, probably late 30s, with dark eyes that scanned Nicole from head to toe in a way that made her skin crawl. His smile was slow, predatory. Well, fresh meat on death row. He stood, extending a hand. "Marcus Wade, you must be the transfer from Dallas." Nicole shook his hand briefly, professionally. "Officer Johnson, Nicole. He drew her name out like he was tasting it. "Pretty name for a pretty officer. We don't usually get women on death row. This is going to be interesting." "I'm here to do my job, Officer Wade." Sure. We all are." He grabbed a clipboard. "Come on, I'll give you the tour. And call me Marcus. We're going to be spending a lot of time together." Cell block D was a long corridor with 47 cells, each housing a single inmate awaiting execution. The cells were small, maybe 8 by 10 feet, with a metal bed frame, a toilet, and nothing else. No windows except the small slot in each door. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed constantly, and the air smelled like disinfectant trying and failing to mask something darker underneath. "This is the row," Wade said as they walked. "These men are already dead. They just don't know it yet. Your job is to make sure they don't take anyone with them when they go." He paused outside cell 12. "See this one? Ramirez. Killed 3 people. Tried to strangle a guard last year. Don't ever turn your back on him. They continued down the corridor. Wade pointed out the dangerous ones, the quiet ones, the ones who'd given up. Nicole took mental notes, her training kicking in automatically, and then they reached cell 23. Wade's voice shifted, took on an edge, and this is our international guest, Lee Hyun-jin, Korean national, got himself convicted of murdering a federal prosecutor 5 years ago. Death by lethal injection, scheduled for execution in... He checked his watch theatrically. 90 days. Poor bastard. Nicole looked through the small window in the door. The man inside sat on his bunk, reading. He was young, mid-30s maybe, with dark hair and an impossibly calm expression for someone on death row. He wore the standard orange jumpsuit, but somehow, on him, it looked almost dignified. There was something about the way he held himself, the set of his shoulders, that spoke of education and refinement. As if sensing her gaze, he looked up. Their eyes met through the reinforced glass. Nicole's breath caught. His eyes were dark, intelligent, and filled with something she couldn't quite name. Not anger or desperation like she'd expected. Something else. Resignation mixed with a flicker of hope so faint it might have been her imagination. The moment stretched. Beautiful, isn't he? Wade's voice broke the spell, laced with mockery. All the female nurses get all flustered when they have to do his medical checks. Too bad he's going to be dead in 3 months. He laughed. Come on, let's finish the tour. Nicole tore her gaze away and followed Wade, but she could feel Hyun-jin's eyes on her back. What she didn't know was that in those 3 seconds, something had shifted. Hyun-jin had been on death row for 5 years. In that time, hundreds of guards had walked past his cell. None of them had ever looked at him the way Nicole just had, like he was still human, like he still mattered. And that single look would set in motion a chain of events that would destroy them both before it saved them. But first, things had to get much, much worse. Nicole's first week at Ironwood was brutal. The work itself wasn't the problem. She'd handled difficult inmates before, knew how to maintain authority without escalating situations, could read body language and defuse tension before it exploded into violence. Death row was different, though. These men had nothing to lose, which made them either completely broken or incredibly dangerous. Sometimes both. No. The work she could handle. It was Officer Wade that made her skin crawl. He'd started small. Comments about her appearance during shift changes. Looking good today, Nicole. That uniform fits you real nice. Standing too close when reviewing the daily logs. Accidentally brushing against her when they passed in the narrow corridors. By Thursday, he'd escalated. You know, he said during their break, leaning against the vending machine while she tried to ignore him and eat her sandwich. Me and you could have some fun after shifts. I know a place not too far from here. Good steaks, strong drinks. What do you say? I don't date colleagues, Marcus. Nothing personal. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Everything's personal, sweetheart. You're going to learn that real quick here. Friday afternoon, he cornered her in the supply room while she was restocking her utility belt. His body blocked the door. You think you're too good for me? His voice had dropped, angry now. I've been at Ironwood for 12 years. I know every guard, every administrator, the warden himself. You're the new girl. You should be trying to make friends, not enemies. Nicole's hand moved to her pepper spray instinctively. Step back, Marcus. Or what? You gonna report me? He laughed, but there was menace in it. Go ahead. See how far that gets you. See what Warden Stone thinks about an uppity transfer causing problems in her first week. He stepped aside then, letting her pass, but his smile promised this wasn't over. That night, Nicole sat in her temporary apartment, a dingy 1-bedroom 20 minutes from the prison, and seriously considered quitting. Just walking away from corrections entirely, moving back to Houston, starting over in a different field. But that would mean Harris won. That his punishment had worked. She couldn't let that happen. So Saturday morning, she returned to Ironwood for her weekend shift, head high, ready for whatever came next. What came next was Hyun Jin. She was doing her second rounds when she reached cell 23. Usually, inmates were asleep or pretending to sleep during early rounds. Hyun Jin was awake, sitting on his bunk, hands folded calmly in his lap. When she reached his door, he spoke. His English was perfect, barely accented. "Officer Johnson," she paused. Surprised he knew her name already. "You're different from the others," he continued. "You look at us like we're still people. Most guards here look through us like we're already ghosts. Nicole's training said, don't engage, keep moving." But something made her stop. "How do you know my name?" A slight smile. "I pay attention. It's how I've survived 5 years in this place." He stood, moved closer to the door, but kept a respectful distance from the glass. "You're the transfer from Dallas, the one Wade's been harassing." Her eyes narrowed. "How?" "Sound carries in here. We hear everything. Every conversation, every threat, every moment of cruelty. We're invisible, but we're not deaf." His expression grew serious. "Be careful with Wade. He's dangerous. I can handle myself." "I'm sure you can. But this place..." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Ironwood isn't like other prisons. There are things that happen here, things that get covered up. People who ask too many questions or refuse to cooperate tend to disappear or get transferred to worse situations, if that's even possible." "Why are you telling me this?" Hyunjin looked at her for a long moment. "Because in 5 years, you're the first person who's looked at me like I still have a future, even though I don't. Even though I'll be dead in 90 days. That matters. So I'm returning the favour. Watch your back." Nicole should have walked away then, should have reported the conversation, maintained professional distance, followed every rule she'd been taught. Instead, she asked, "What did you do to end up here?" His expression shifted, pain and frustration and bitter acceptance all at once. "I discovered something I wasn't supposed to know, and powerful people decided I was more convenient dead than alive. So they made me a murderer." He smiled without humour. "But you don't believe me. No one does. Why should you?" "Did you kill federal prosecutor David Chen?" "No." The word was simple, definite. "But I was there when he died, and that was enough." A door clanged somewhere down the corridor, signalling the end of rounds. Nicole needed to keep moving. "Thank you for the warning, Mr. Lee." "Hyunjin, if I only have 90 days left, I'd prefer people use my actual name." She nodded and continued her rounds, but her mind was racing. Everything about Hyunjin was wrong for death row. His composure, his education, the way he spoke about his situation without rage or denial, just resignation. That night, Nicole did something she'd never done before. She looked up his case. The public records were easy enough to access. Anyone could Google federal murder trials. What she found made her stomach twist. Lee Hyun-jin had been a financial analyst for Daehan Financial Group, one of Korea's largest corporations. 5 years ago, federal prosecutor David Chen had been investigating the company for money laundering and fraud. The night before Chen was scheduled to testify before a grand jury, he'd been found dead in his home, multiple stab wounds, Hyunjin's DNA under his fingernails, and a knife with Hyunjin's prints in the bedroom. The trial had been swift, the evidence overwhelming. Hyunjin's defense team argued frame-up, planted evidence, corporate conspiracy. The jury deliberated for 6 hours and came back with guilty on all counts. Death penalty. Now, 5 years later, all appeals exhausted, Hyunjin was 90 days from lethal injection, case closed, except... Nicole kept reading. She found an interview with Hyunjin's original lawyer, a man named Thomas Park, who'd died 2 years ago in a car accident. In his last interview before his death, Park had said, "I believe my client is innocent. I believe powerful forces orchestrated his conviction, and I believe anyone who digs too deeply into this case puts themselves in danger, but the truth matters more than safety." 3 weeks later, Thomas Park drove his car off a bridge. Single vehicle accident, the report said. No foul play suspected. Nicole closed her laptop, heart pounding. She should leave this alone, do her job, serve her time at Ironwood, transfer somewhere better eventually. But that look in Hyunjin's eyes kept haunting her. If you're wondering what Nicole decides to do next, hit that like button and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, because this decision is about to change everything. The note appeared on Tuesday. Nicole found it slipped under the door of her apartment when she got home from her shift at 11 p.m. A single piece of paper folded precisely. Her name written in neat handwriting across the front. Her heart rate kicked up as she picked it up. This couldn't be good. She unfolded it with shaking hands. Cell block D, midnight. I'll tell you everything. Come alone. H. Nicole stared at the note for a solid minute. This was insane. Meeting an inmate alone at midnight violated approximately 17 different regulations. If anyone found out, she'd be fired immediately, possibly prosecuted. And yet, I'll tell you everything. She looked at the clock. 11:14 p.m., 46 minutes to decide. Her training said no. Her instinct said danger. Her career said don't even think about it. But something else, something she couldn't quite name, said yes. At 11:47 p.m, Nicole left her apartment. She drove the 20 minutes back to Ironwood in silence. No radio, just the sound of her own breathing and the voice in her head screaming that this was the stupidest decision she'd ever made. She parked in the employee lot. The night shift guard at the gate barely glanced at her ID. Officers coming back for forgotten items or paperwork wasn't unusual. She signed in, clipped her badge to her belt, and walked through the security checkpoints like she had every right to be there. Her hands were steady. That was training, but her heart was hammering against her ribs. Cell block D at midnight was a different world. The overhead fluorescents were dimmed to half power. Most inmates were asleep, or pretending to be. The only sounds were occasional coughs, the shuffle of someone turning over on their bunk, the ever-present buzz of the lights. Nicole's boots echoed against the concrete floor as she walked down the corridor. Cell 23. Hyunjin was waiting. He stood near the door, hands visible, non-threatening. When he saw her, something in his expression shifted. Surprise mixed with relief, mixed with something that looked almost like hope. You came. His voice was barely above a whisper. I wasn't sure you would. Nicole stopped 3 feet from his door, far enough to react if this was a trap, close enough to hear him without raising their voices. I'm here. Talk. And this better be worth risking my entire career. It is. I promise. He took a breath. 5 years ago, I was a senior financial analyst at Daehan Financial Group in Seoul. I was good at my job, too good. I started noticing irregularities in our American operations, money moving through shell companies, transactions that didn't match our legitimate business, amounts that were too large and too frequent to be normal. Nicole listened, saying nothing. I spent 6 months building a case internally, documents, transaction records, communication logs. I reported it to senior management. They thanked me for my diligence and said they'd investigate. His expression darkened. 2 weeks later, I was approached by the CEO's brother-in-law He offered me $2 million to forget what I'd seen. When I refused, he offered $5 million. When I refused again, he told me I was making a mistake. And you went to the authorities? I tried to. I contacted federal prosecutor David Chen. He was already investigating Daehan for other charges. I told him I had evidence that would make his case. We arranged to meet at his home. He didn't want me coming to his office, thought it was safer that way. Hyunjin's voice grew rough. I arrived at 8 p.m. The door was unlocked. I found him in his bedroom, already dead. I checked for a pulse, got blood on my hands, my clothes. I called 911, and 5 minutes later, the police arrived and arrested me. Your DNA under his fingernails, your fingerprints on the knife, planted, all of it. He moved closer to the small window in his door, and in the dim light, Nicole could see the desperation in his eyes. I never touched that knife. I never fought with Chen. But somehow my DNA was under his nails, my prints were on the murder weapon, and security footage from the street showed me arriving 30 minutes before the actual time I got there. Edited footage. But the jury believed it. You're saying a major Korean corporation framed you for murder to cover up financial crimes. I'm saying powerful people decided I was more convenient in prison than in a courtroom, and everyone who might have helped me, my lawyer, a journalist who started investigating, a former Daehan employee who could corroborate my story, they all ended up dead or scared into silence. Nicole's mind raced. This is, if what you're saying is true, it is true, and I can prove it. Hyunjin pulled something from under his shirt, a small piece of paper folded tight. He slid it through the small slot at the bottom of his door, the one used for food trays. Nicole picked it up carefully, unfolded it. A name, a phone number, an address in Dallas, Park Min-soo. Hyunjin said quietly. She was my colleague at Daehan. We were close. Before all this happened, I sent her copies of everything, all my evidence, all my documentation. She's been trying for 5 years to get someone to listen, but she's just one person with no resources and no power against a corporation worth billions. Why are you telling me this? Why now? Because in 90 days, I'll be dead. His voice cracked slightly, the first real emotion she'd heard from him. And once I'm executed, the truth dies with me. Daehan wins. The people who murdered David Chen walk free, and everyone who's tried to expose them ends up silenced. He pressed his palm against the glass. You're different, Officer Johnson. You still believe in justice. I can see it in the way you carry yourself, the way you treat inmates like human beings. So I'm asking, no, I'm begging, call Min-soo. Look at the evidence, and if you believe me, help me prove my innocence before it's too late. Nicole stared at the paper in her hand. This was insane. This was dangerous. This could cost her everything. Please. Hyunjin's voice was raw. I'm not asking you to break me out. I'm not asking you to do anything illegal. Just look at the evidence. Verify what I'm saying, and if I'm lying, if I'm making this all up, walk away. But if I'm telling the truth... He stopped, composing himself. If I'm telling the truth, then an innocent man is about to be executed, and the real killers are going to get away with it. Can you live with that? The question hung in the air between them. Nicole folded the paper carefully, slipped it into her pocket. I'll call her. That's all I'm promising. The relief that washed over Hyunjin's face was almost painful to watch. Thank you. Thank you. That's all I'm asking. If this is a setup, if you're playing me, I'm not. I swear on everything I have left, which isn't much. I'm not playing you. I'm just trying to survive. Nicole nodded once, turned to leave. Officer Johnson? She stopped, looked back. Be careful. If you start asking questions, the same people who put me here will notice. and they don't leave loose ends. His expression was grim. I've survived 5 years on death row, but the most dangerous people aren't in here with me. They're out there, wearing expensive suits and making campaign donations and acting like pillars of the community. Those are the ones you need to fear. Nicole left cell block D at 12:34 a.m., signed out at the gate, drove home in silence. She sat in her car outside her apartment for 20 minutes, staring at the paper in her hand. Then she pulled out her phone and dialed. The number rang 4 times before a female voice answered, thick with sleep and caution. "Who is this?" "My name is Nicole Johnson. I'm a correctional officer at Ironwood Maximum Security. I need to talk to you about Lee Hyun-jin." Silence on the other end. Then, "Are you alone? Is anyone listening to this call?" "I'm alone." "Where are you right now?" "Outside my apartment." "Why?" "Get inside. Lock your doors. I'll call you back in 5 minutes from a secure line." "And Officer Johnson? If you're working for them, if this is a trap, it won't end well for either of us." The line went dead. Nicole sat there, heart pounding, wondering what the hell she'd just gotten herself into. Her phone rang exactly 5 minutes later. "There's a diner called Rosie's on Highway 287, 40 minutes from Ironwood," Min-soo's voice said without preamble. "Meet me there tomorrow at 2 p.m. Come alone. Don't tell anyone where you're going. And Officer Johnson, bring an open mind, because what I'm about to show you will change everything you think you know about Hyun-jin's case." "How do I know you're who you say you are?" A pause. Then, 5 years ago, on the night before his arrest, Hyun-jin and I had dinner at a small restaurant in Seoul. He told me he loved me. I told him I loved him too. And then he said he had to do something dangerous, something that might cost him everything, but it was the right thing to do. Min-soo's voice broke. I begged him not to go. He went anyway. 24 hours later, he was in custody for murder. I've spent every day since trying to prove his innocence. And now, with 90 days left, you're the first person who's actually agreed to listen. Nicole closed her eyes. "I'll be there tomorrow at 2 p.m. Thank you. And Officer Johnson, watch your back. They're always watching." That night, Nicole didn't sleep. And somewhere in cell block D, neither did Hyun-jin. Both of them could feel it, that electric sense that something was shifting, that invisible forces were already moving against them. The question wasn't whether Nicole would help him. The question was whether either of them would survive what came next. If you need to know what Min-soo reveals at that diner, make sure you're subscribed because things are about to get dangerous. Rosie's diner looked like it hadn't been updated since 1987, which was probably accurate. Cracked red vinyl booths, a counter with spinning stools and a jukebox in the corner that may or may not still work. Nicole arrived at 1:55 p.m., scanned the mostly empty restaurant, and spotted her immediately. Park Min-soo sat in the back corner booth, facing the door. Late 20s, delicate features, dark hair pulled into a ponytail, wearing jeans and an oversized sweater that made her look younger than she probably was. Her eyes tracked Nicole's approach with the wariness of someone who'd learned not to trust easily. Nicole slid into the booth across from her. "Min-soo?" "Officer Johnson." Not a question. Min-soo's English carried a stronger accent than Hyun-jin's, but it was clear and precise. "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." "I wasn't sure I would either." Nicole flagged down the waitress, ordered coffee, waited until they were alone again. "So, prove it. Prove he's innocent." Min-soo reached down and pulled a worn leather messenger bag onto the table. From it, she extracted a tablet and a thick manila folder. 5 years ago, Hyun-jin sent me everything he'd compiled on Daehan Financial. Transaction records, internal emails, communication logs, everything. He sent it the day before he went to meet Prosecutor Chen. He told me if anything happened to him, to keep it safe and find someone who could use it. She opened the folder and spread documents across the table. Bank statements, wire transfer records, corporate communications. Nicole picked up one document, an internal email chain discussing handling the analyst problem. This email, Min-soo said, pointing, is from Park Ji-won, the CEO's brother-in-law, to senior management. It's dated 3 days before David Chen was murdered. He's discussing permanent solutions to investigative threats. Hyunjin's name appears 17 times. Nicole read carefully. The language was coded, but the implication was clear. They were planning something. This doesn't prove he was framed for murder. No, but this does. Min-soo pulled up a video file on her tablet. This is security footage from the street outside David Chen's house on the night of the murder. The footage shown at trial showed Hyunjin arriving at 7:32 p.m. But this is the raw, unedited footage from the same camera. She hit play. The timestamp read 8:03 p.m. A car pulled up. Hyunjin's car. He got out, walked to the front door, knocked. No answer. He tried the handle, found it unlocked, went inside. At 8:08 p.m, he came running out, phone to his ear, calling 911 presumably. At 8:13 p.m, police arrived and arrested him. The trial footage, Min-soo said quietly, showed him arriving at 7:32 p.m, 31 minutes earlier than he actually arrived. The edited version made it look like he had time to commit the murder. The real footage shows he arrived after Chen was already dead. Nicole's hands tightened on her coffee cup. Where did you get this? A contact who works in the Seoul Police Department. Someone who knew something was wrong with the case. He pulled the original files and gave them to me anonymously. Min-soo's expression was grim. He was killed in a car accident 6 months later. Single vehicle crash, exactly like Hyunjin's lawyer. Jesus. There's more. Min-soo pulled out another document. This is David Chen's autopsy report. The real one, not the one entered into evidence. Time of death was between 7 and 7:30 p.m. Hyunjin arrived at 8:03 p.m. He couldn't have killed Chen, but the autopsy report at trial had been altered to show time of death between 7:30 and 8:30 p.m., making it possible for Hyunjin to be the killer. Nicole felt sick. How is this possible? How does an entire police department, an entire prosecution team, all collaborate to frame one person? Money, power, fear. Min-soo leaned forward. Daehan Financial Group is worth $30 billion. They have politicians in their pocket, police chiefs, judges. When they want something to disappear, it disappears. When they want someone silenced, they're silenced. Hyunjin tried to expose them, and they destroyed him for it. But why death row? Why not just disappear him? Because a public trial, a conviction, makes it look legitimate, makes it look like justice. If Hyunjin just vanished, people might ask questions. This way, the world thinks he's a murderer when he's executed in... She checked her watch. 87 days. No one will mourn him. Case closed. Nicole spread the documents across the table again, looking at them with fresh eyes. If this was real, and it looked terrifyingly real, then Hyunjin was telling the truth. Why now? Nicole asked. Why hasn't anyone done anything with this evidence before? I've tried. For 5 years I've tried. Min-soo's voice cracked. I went to lawyers. They wouldn't touch it. I went to journalists. Stories got killed before publication. I went to the FBI. My complaints disappeared into a black hole. Every door I knocked on got slammed in my face. Daehan's reach is too long, their power too great. I'm just one person, Officer Johnson. I don't have resources or connections or protection. I have documents that could free an innocent man. but no one will listen to me. But you think I can change that? You're inside Ironwood. You have access to Hyunjin. You're law enforcement. People will listen to you in ways they won't listen to me. Min-soo's eyes were desperate. I'm not asking you to break the law. I'm asking you to help me find someone who can, someone with power, someone incorruptible, someone who can take this evidence and actually do something with it before it's too late. Nicole was quiet for a long time, mind racing. Everything Min-soo showed her looked legitimate. The documents were detailed, specific, verifiable. The video footage was damning. The autopsy discrepancy was impossible to explain away. Either this was an incredibly elaborate hoax, or Lee Hyun-jin was an innocent man on death row, and if he was innocent... I need to think about this, Nicole said finally. We don't have time to think. Min-soo grabbed her hand across the table. 87 days. That's how long Hyunjin has left. The appeals are exhausted. The execution date is set. If we don't act now... I said I need to think. Nicole pulled her hand back, not unkindly. I could lose everything. My job, my career, possibly my freedom if I'm wrong about this. I need 24 hours to process. Min-soo's shoulders sagged, but she nodded. I understand. Take my number. Call me when you decide. But please, Officer Johnson, don't take too long. That clock is ticking, and when it runs out, an innocent man dies, and the real killers walk free. Nicole left the diner with copies of everything Min-soo had shown her, her mind spinning. She drove back toward Ironwood in a daze, documents sitting in a folder on her passenger seat, like evidence of some terrible crime she'd witnessed, which, in a way, they were. She was 10 minutes from the prison when her phone rang. Unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Hello? Officer Johnson. The voice was male, older, cultured. We need to talk about the questions you've been asking. Her blood ran cold. Who is this? Someone who knows you met with Park Min-soo today. Someone who knows you've been looking into Lee Hyun-jin's case. Someone who strongly advises you to stop before you do something that can't be undone. Are you threatening me? I'm warning you. There are forces at work here that you don't understand. Systems that are far larger than one correctional officer with a hero complex. Walk away, Officer Johnson. Go back to doing your job. Forget about Hyun-jin. Forget about Min-soo. Forget all of this. And if I don't... A pause. Then you'll learn what happens to people who don't take good advice. And trust me, you won't like the lesson. The line went dead. Nicole's hands were shaking on the steering wheel. She pulled over to the side of the highway, heart pounding, mind reeling. They knew. Whoever they were, they knew she'd met with Min-soo, which meant they were watching her, had been watching her, possibly since her first conversation with Hyun-jin. For the first time since this began, Nicole felt real fear. She looked at the folder on her passenger seat, looked at her phone, looked at the road stretching ahead toward Ironwood. She could turn around, drive back to Dallas, quit her job, disappear, or she could keep going. And if she kept going, there was no telling where this would end. Nicole sat there for a long time, the decision pressing down on her like physical weight. Finally, she put the car in drive and pulled back onto the highway. But she didn't head toward Ironwood. She headed toward Dallas, toward the FBI field office, toward a friend from her training days who now worked in federal investigations. If Hyun-jin was telling the truth, she needed help. And if he was lying, she needed to know before she destroyed her life for nothing. Either way, there was no going back now. The die was cast, and somewhere in a corporate office in Seoul, someone was already making a phone call to ensure Nicole Johnson learned her lesson about asking the wrong questions. The trap was being set, and Nicole was walking right into it. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that someone else was also making moves. Someone who'd been watching this whole situation develop. Someone who had their own reasons for wanting Hyunjin free. And when all the pieces finally came together, the explosion would be bigger than anyone anticipated. If you're on the edge of your seat right now, drop a comment and let us know. Are you Team Nicole? Team Hyunjin? And who do you think is pulling the strings? Because what's coming next will blow your mind. Special Agent James Rodriguez looked up from his desk when Nicole walked into his office, surprise evident on his face. They'd gone through the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center together 4 years ago, stayed in touch sporadically after Nicole chose corrections and Rodriguez went FBI. Nicole Johnson, I'll be damned. He stood, extending a hand. What brings you to Dallas? Nicole closed his office door. I need your help, and I need you to keep this completely confidential. His expression shifted. Professional now. Sit down, talk. For the next hour, Nicole laid it all out. Her transfer to Ironwood, meeting Hyunjin, the midnight conversation, Min Soo and her evidence, the threatening phone call. She spread the documents across Rodriguez's desk, pulled up the video footage on her phone, explained every detail. Rodriguez listened without interrupting, his face growing more serious with each revelation. When she finished, he sat back in his chair, exhaling slowly. Jesus, Nicole, do you realize what you're involved in here? An innocent man on death row. A conspiracy involving international corporations, murdered federal prosecutors, falsified evidence, and what appears to be systemic corruption spanning 2 countries. He picked up one of the documents, studied it carefully. If even half of this is real, it's the biggest case I've seen in 10 years with the Bureau. So, you'll help? Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. I need to verify all of this. The documents, the footage, the autopsy report. I need to confirm Min Soo Park is who she says she is. I need to check Hyunjin's original case file for discrepancies. This is going to take time. Time is the one thing we don't have. He's got 87 days. I understand. But if I'm going to take this to my superiors, I need to be absolutely certain we're not being played. You understand that, right? He leaned forward. Nicole, if this is real, you've stumbled onto something that's going to make a lot of powerful people very angry. You need to be prepared for what comes next. What comes next? They'll try to discredit you. They'll dig into your background, find anything they can use against you. That transfer from Dallas, your former supervisor, Captain Harris, if he's connected to this somehow, they'll use him to paint you as an unstable officer with a grudge. Nicole felt cold. She hadn't considered that angle. Give me 48 hours, Rodriguez said. I'll verify everything quietly. In the meantime, go back to Ironwood, act normal. Don't talk to Hyunjin again unless absolutely necessary. And for God's sake, don't tell anyone else about this. Min Soo, I'll contact Min Soo directly. You stay away from her for now. If they're watching you, we don't want to paint a bigger target on her back than there already is. Nicole nodded, stood to leave. Nicole? Rodriguez's voice stopped her at the door. Be careful. If Hyunjin's telling the truth, you're up against people who've already murdered at least 2 people to keep this quiet. Don't assume they'll stop at 2. Nicole returned to Ironwood that evening for her night shift, hyper-aware of every person she passed, every camera, every shadow. Rodriguez's warning echoed in her head. They're watching you. Officer Wade was at the cell block D security desk when she arrived. His smile was lazy, predatory. Nicole, heard you called in sick for your morning shift. Feeling better? She hadn't called in sick. She'd traded shifts with another officer. So why was Wade lying? Much better, thanks. Good, good. Hate to think of you out there, all alone, not taking care of yourself. He stood, stretched, moved closer. You know, if you ever need someone to check on you, make sure you're safe. I'm happy to volunteer. I'm fine, Marcus. Suit yourself. But his smile suggested he knew something she didn't. Nicole did her rounds mechanically, avoiding cell 23 until she couldn't anymore. When she finally reached Hyunjin's cell, he was waiting. Their eyes met through the glass, and she saw the question there. Did you call her? Did you look at the evidence? She gave the smallest nod. Relief flooded his expression. She kept walking, but she felt his gaze follow her down the corridor. The next 48 hours were the longest of Nicole's life. She worked her shifts, kept her head down, avoided Wade's increasingly aggressive advances. She didn't call Min-soo. She didn't return to Hyunjin's cell. She waited. On the third night, Rodriguez called, "Meet me at your apartment in 1 hour. Come alone." Nicole's stomach dropped at his tone. "What did you find?" "Just meet me. 1 hour." 62 minutes later, Rodriguez sat at her small kitchen table, his expression grim. "It's all real," he said without preamble. "Every document Min-soo gave you checks out. The video footage is authentic. I had our tech people verify it. The autopsy report discrepancy is documented, and I found something else." He pulled out his own folder, spread new documents across the table. 3 months before David Chen was killed, he filed a request with the Justice Department for witness protection. He claimed he'd received credible death threats related to his investigation into Daehan Financial. The request was denied due to insufficient evidence of imminent danger. 2 months later, he was dead. Nicole felt sick. Someone knew Chen was in danger and did nothing. Worse, I looked into who reviewed and denied that protection request. Rodriguez pointed to a signature at the bottom of a form. Assistant Director Marcus Wade, FBI Dallas Field Office. Nicole's blood ran cold. Marcus Wade? Any relation to Officer Marcus Wade at Ironwood? His brother. Officer Wade mentioned it once, bragging about his brother at the FBI. Rodriguez and Nicole looked at each other as the implications sank in. "They're connected," Nicole whispered. "Ironwood, the FBI, all of it. Jesus Christ, how deep does this go?" "I don't know yet, but Nicole, you need to understand something. If the corruption extends into the FBI, if Marcus Wade's brother was part of the cover-up, then reporting this through normal channels won't work. They'll bury it. Or bury us. Then what do? We go above the Bureau, Justice Department, Inspector General's office, maybe even congressional oversight. But we need to be smart about this. We need more evidence, more proof. Nicole's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "We know you talked to the FBI. Last warning. Walk away or face the consequences." She showed Rodriguez, her hand shaking. He swore under his breath. "They've got surveillance on you. Probably have had it since your first conversation with Hyunjin. Your phone, your car, maybe even your apartment. Then what do? I can't just..." Another text. "Check your employment email, now." Nicole opened her laptop with trembling hands, logged into her Ironwood account. One new email from Warden Michael Stone. "Officer Johnson, effective immediately, you are being placed on administrative leave pending investigation into misconduct allegations. You are not to enter Ironwood facilities or have contact with any inmates. A formal hearing will be scheduled within 7 days. Failure to comply will result in immediate termination and possible criminal charges." "They're coming after me," Nicole said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're going to destroy my career." "They're trying to isolate you." Rodriguez was already on his phone, texting someone. "Get you away from Hyunjin, discredit you before you can do anything with the evidence. Classic intimidation tactic." "What do? You fight back. We go public. Contact every journalist, every media outlet, every oversight organization we can find. We flood the zone with this story before they can bury it. And if that doesn't work..." Rodriguez met her eyes. "Then we pray Hyun-jin survives the next 85 days. Because if they're willing to frame him for murder, falsify evidence, and corrupt multiple law enforcement agencies, they won't hesitate to arrange an accident in prison to silence him permanently." Nicole's phone rang. "Min-soo, Officer Johnson, you need to come to Dallas right now. Something's happened. Something terrible." "What? Min-soo, what?" "Someone broke into my apartment. They took everything. All the original documents, my computer, everything. All I have left are the copies I gave you." Her voice was panicked, and there was a note. It said... She broke off, sobbing. "It said I'm next if I don't disappear. They know where I live. They know where I work. Officer Johnson, I'm terrified." Rodriguez grabbed the phone. "Ms. Park, this is FBI Special Agent James Rodriguez. I need you to listen very carefully. Pack a bag right now. Essential items only. Go to a public place, a mall, a police station, somewhere with cameras and people. I'm sending agents to pick you up. Do not go home. Do not contact anyone else. Do you understand?" "Yes, yes. Okay. We're going to protect you. But you need to move now." He hung up and immediately made another call, barking orders to someone about protective custody and safe houses. Nicole sat there, feeling the walls close in. In 3 days, she'd gone from a respected correctional officer to someone on administrative leave, caught up in a conspiracy that had already killed multiple people. "I have to warn Hyun-jin," she said suddenly. "If they're moving this fast, if they're cleaning up loose ends, he's in danger. You can't. You're on administrative leave. You can't enter the prison. Then he dies. They'll arrange something, a suicide, an attack by another inmate, a medical emergency. They'll make sure he never makes it to that execution date, because dead inmates can't have their cases reopened." Rodriguez was quiet for a moment, thinking. "How well do you know the other guards at Ironwood? Anyone you trust absolutely?" Nicole thought hard. Officer Chen. She's been there 15 years, never takes bribes, filed harassment complaints against Wade twice. If anyone there is clean, it's her. Can you contact her without going through official channels? Maybe. She gave me her personal number once. Then call her tonight. Tell her Hyun-jin's life is in danger. Tell her to watch him, keep him safe, document everything, and tell her if anything happens to him, she needs to contact me immediately. Nicole made the call. Officer Chen answered on the third ring, suspicious at first, then deeply concerned as Nicole explained. "I've seen Wade talking to the warden more than usual," Chen said quietly. "And yesterday, they moved a new inmate to the cell next to Hyun-jin's. Guy's got a reputation for violence, killed his last cellmate at another facility. Doesn't make sense putting him on death row unless they're setting something up," Nicole finished. "I'll watch him, both of them. And Nicole, be careful. I don't know what's going on, but it's big, bigger than Ironwood." That night, Nicole couldn't sleep. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind running through scenarios. In 85 days, Hyun-jin would be executed for a crime he didn't commit, unless Nicole could prove his innocence first, which meant going up against people who'd already demonstrated they'd kill to protect their secrets, people who had resources, power, and apparently no conscience. And all Nicole had was a few documents, a FBI agent who believed her, and a determination that this innocent man would not die on her watch. It wasn't much, but it would have to be enough. What Nicole didn't know, what she couldn't know, was that in Seoul, in an expensive high-rise office, Park Ji-won was having a very different conversation. "The Johnson woman is more trouble than anticipated," he said into his encrypted phone. "She needs to be handled permanently. That will draw attention." The voice on the other end replied, "Especially with the FBI already involved. Then make it look like an accident. Make it look like she's unstable, dangerous. Frame her for something that discredits her completely." Ji-won smiled coldly. "After all, we've done it before. We're quite good at it. And Lee Hyun-jin, he dies. Not on his execution date. Too expected. Arrange something sooner. A suicide attempt that succeeds. Or perhaps he attacks a guard and is shot. I don't care how, just make it happen within the week." "Understood." Ji-won hung up and turned to look out his office window at the Seoul skyline. 5 years he'd been cleaning up this mess. 5 years of payoffs, threats, and strategic eliminations. He wasn't about to let one idealistic correctional officer undo everything now. The pieces were moving. The trap was set. And someone was going to die. The only question was whether it would be Hyun-jin or Nicole, or possibly both. 3 days later, at 2:17 a.m., Nicole's phone exploded with calls. Officer Chen, hysterical. "Nicole, get here now. It's Hyun-jin. Someone tried to kill him." Nicole was in her car within 5 minutes, breaking every speed limit. On the highway to Ironwood, she knew showing up violated her administrative leave, knew it could cost her everything. She didn't care. 42 minutes later, she badged through the gate. Her credentials still worked somehow, and ran toward cell block D chaos. Guards everywhere, medical personnel, Warden Stone barking orders, and in the middle of it all, Officer Chen standing outside cell 23, her face pale. "What happened?" Nicole demanded. Chen grabbed her arm, pulled her aside. The inmate in cell 24, the violent one they moved in last week. Someone left his cell door unlocked. Around 2 a.m. he got out, went straight for Hyun-jin's cell. The door was also unlocked. Nicole's blood ran cold. "Both doors! That's not an accident." "I know. I was on rounds, heard the commotion. By the time I got there, the guy had Hyun-jin on the ground, choking him. I pulled him off, called for backup. Hyun-jin's alive, but barely. They're taking him to the prison hospital now." Nicole pushed past the guards, ignoring their protests, and reached Hyun-jin's cell just as paramedics were loading him onto a stretcher. His face was bruised, throat dark with finger marks, but his eyes found hers. "Nicole," he whispered, voice ragged. "They're trying to kill me. You were right. I know. We're going to fix this. Officer Johnson." Warden Stone's voice cut through the chaos. "You are not authorized to be here. Security. Escort her out immediately." 2 guards grabbed Nicole's arms. "Wait, I need to talk to him. You're in violation of your administrative leave. Guards, remove her from this facility, now." They dragged her backward. Hyun-jin tried to sit up on the stretcher, calling her name, but the paramedics pushed him back down. "I'll fix this," Nicole shouted. "I promise, I'll fix this." Then she was in the corridor, being marched toward the exit. But before they reached the main gate, Officer Wade stepped into their path. His smile was vicious. Well, breaking the rules, Nicole. Tisk. That's grounds for immediate termination, maybe even criminal charges for trespassing. Get out of my way, Marcus. Or what? You'll file a complaint? He laughed. Go ahead. See where that gets you. You're done here. Done everywhere. No police department, no prison will ever hire you again after we're through with you. Nicole lunged at him, but the guards held her back. Wade leaned in close. You should have been nicer to me when you had the chance. Now you're going to learn what happens to women who think they're too good for their own good. He nodded to the guards. Get her out of here, and make sure it's noted in her file that she attempted to assault a superior officer. That should help with the termination paperwork. They threw Nicole out at the main gate, literally threw her, so she stumbled and fell to the pavement. Her badge was confiscated, her ID revoked. She sat there in the parking lot, scraped and furious and terrified as the sun started to rise. Her phone rang. Rodriguez. "Nicole, where are you?" "Outside Ironwood. They threw me out. Someone tried to kill Hyunjin tonight and I know. I've got people inside feeding me information. Listen to me very carefully. They're coming after you hard now. Warden Stone is filing charges against you for trespassing, assault, and obstruction. And there's something else." Nicole felt the bottom drop out of her world. What? Someone leaked a story to the press. It's all over the news this morning. Disgraced correctional officer obsessed with death row inmate. They're painting you as unstable, claiming you had an inappropriate relationship with Hyunjin, saying you tried to help him escape. That's insane. None of that is true. I know. But they're good at this. They've fabricated evidence, emails supposedly from you to Hyunjin, phone records showing unauthorized calls, even a statement from Captain Harris claiming you were fired from Dallas for similar behavior. Nicole couldn't breathe. They're destroying me. They're trying to. But here's the thing. They're moving too fast, making mistakes. I've got a team analysing everything, and the fabrication is sloppy. We can prove it's fake. We can prove this is all part of the cover-up. But Nicole, he paused, you need to disappear for a few days. Go somewhere they can't find you while we build the case. Because if you stay visible, they might move from destroying your reputation to something more permanent. I can't run. I can't abandon Hyunjin. He's alive. Officer Chen is watching him. I've got agents on standby. But you can't help him if you're dead. Please, Nicole. Trust me. Give me 1 week. 7 days. That's all I need to take this to the Justice Department, to Congress, to every oversight body that exists. But I need you alive to testify. Nicole sat there in her car, watching the sunrise paint the sky pink and gold, and felt everything she'd worked for crumbling around her. She'd tried to do the right thing, and it had cost her everything. But Hyunjin was still alive, and as long as he was alive, there was still hope. "Okay," she whispered. "Tell me where to go." The safe house was a cabin 2 hours outside Dallas, isolated and secure. Rodriguez set Nicole up with food, a burner phone, and instructions not to contact anyone. For 3 days, she paced like a caged animal, watching news coverage of her own downfall. They'd painted her as obsessed, unstable, possibly dangerous. Captain Harris gave interviews expressing concern about her mental state. Warden Stone called her a troubled officer who violated every protocol. Even some of her former colleagues at Dallas State Prison were quoted saying they'd always thought something was off about her. It was character assassination, pure and simple. But Rodriguez had been right. They were moving too fast. Nicole watched as journalists started poking holes in the narrative. How had these emails been discovered? Why were they only coming forward now? What was the timeline of events? On the 4th day, Rodriguez called. "We're ready. I'm taking everything to the Justice Department Inspector General tomorrow morning. I've got senators asking questions. I've got journalists digging. And I've got something else." "What?" Min Soo found another witness. Someone who was there the night David Chen died. Someone who saw what really happened. They're willing to testify. Nicole's heart leapt. Who? Chen's neighbour. She heard the fight, saw people leaving his house before Hyunjin ever arrived. She called 911, but her call never made it into the official record. Min Soo tracked her down and she's willing to go public. When? Press conference tomorrow at noon. Justice Department, FBI, congressional representatives. We're blowing this wide open. And Nicole? His voice softened. You need to be there. You need to tell your side of the story. Can you do that? Just tell me when and where. The press conference was held in a federal building in downtown Dallas, packed with journalists and cameras and officials in expensive suits. Nicole stood at the podium, hands shaking, and told the truth. All of it. The frame-up, the conspiracy, the attempts on Hyun-jin's life, the corruption at Ironwood, the connections to Daehan Financial, everything. When she finished, reporters exploded with questions, but Rodriguez stepped in. We'll be releasing a full report with evidence later today. For now, I'll say this. Lee Hyun-jin's execution has been stayed pending a full investigation. Federal agents have taken him into protective custody. Warden Michael Stone and Officer Marcus Wade have been placed on administrative leave, and we are pursuing criminal charges against multiple individuals involved in this conspiracy. The room erupted. Nicole stood there, barely hearing it, one thought consuming her. Hyun-jin was safe. For now. The investigation took 6 weeks. 6 weeks of testimony, evidence review, and growing media coverage. The story became national news. The wrongfully convicted man, the brave correctional officer, the international conspiracy. Daehan Financial Group's stock plummeted. Park Ji-won and 3 other executives were arrested in Seoul. Captain Harris was charged with obstruction of justice. Warden Stone and Officer Wade faced federal corruption charges, and on day 43, a judge overturned Lee Hyun-jin's conviction. He was a free man. Nicole was there when he walked out of the courthouse, blinking in the sunlight like he'd forgotten what it looked like. He'd lost weight. His face was gaunt, but his eyes found hers in the crowd, and everything else disappeared. He walked toward her slowly, like he couldn't believe she was real. When he reached her, he stopped, uncertain. You saved my life, he said quietly. You asked me to believe in justice. I just followed through. Hyun-jin smiled, really smiled, for the first time since she'd met him. Thank you, for not giving up, for risking everything, for... Nicole kissed him, right there, in front of the cameras and the reporters and the entire world. She kissed him like she'd been wanting to since that night at midnight in cell block D, and he kissed her back like a man who'd been given a second chance at life. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Hyun-jin pressed his forehead to hers. What happens now? He whispered. Now we figure out what normal looks like. I don't think I remember normal. Then we'll learn together. 6 months later, Nicole stood in front of a congressional committee testifying about prison corruption and wrongful convictions. Her testimony led to reforms, investigations, and accountability. She didn't go back to corrections work. Instead, she joined Rodriguez at the FBI, specializing in investigating judicial misconduct. Hyun-jin stayed in Dallas. He couldn't return to Korea. Not yet. Not with the trials ongoing, but he found work with a financial ethics organization helping expose corporate corruption. And every evening, when Nicole came home to the apartment they'd found together, he was there, cooking dinner or reading or just existing in a space where no one was trying to kill him. They didn't rush into anything. Both of them had been through too much to move fast, but slowly, carefully, they built something. Trust, partnership, love. Min-soo visited often. She'd become close with both of them, the 3 of them bound together by what they'd survived. Officer Chen sent updates from Ironwood, now under new management, where real reforms were being implemented. Rodriguez became Nicole's partner at the FBI, still saving each other's backs regularly. And on a cool October evening, almost exactly 1 year after Hyun-jin's release, Nicole and Hyun-jin sat on the balcony of their apartment, watching the Dallas skyline light up. Do you ever regret it? Hyun-jin asked quietly. Everything you gave up, everything you went through. Nicole thought about it, about her old life at Dallas State Prison, the career she'd built, the rules she'd always followed. "No," she said finally. "I spent 3 years following rules without questioning them, following orders without thinking about whether they were right. You taught me that justice isn't about following protocol, it's about following truth, even when it costs everything." Hyunjin took her hand. "You taught me that some people still care about truth, that not everyone can be bought or intimidated. That hope still exists, even in the darkest places." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Hyunjin reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Nicole's breath caught. "I know it's fast," he said. "I know we're still figuring things out, but I spent 5 years on death row thinking I'd never have a future, never have a life, never have..." He opened the box, revealing a simple diamond ring. "Never have someone who'd risk everything to prove I mattered. So I'm asking, even though it's crazy, even though we met in the worst possible circumstances, Nicole Johnson, will you marry me?" Nicole looked at the ring, looked at him, looked at this man who'd been sentenced to death and somehow survived, who'd kept hoping even when hope seemed impossible. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, absolutely, yes." He slipped the ring on her finger, and they kissed as the Dallas lights twinkled around them. It wasn't a fairy tale. Both of them had scars. Both of them had nightmares. Both of them would spend years processing the trauma of what they'd been through, but they had each other. They had truth. They had justice. And sometimes that's all you need to build a life worth living. 2 years later, Nicole stood at a podium at the National Criminal Justice Reform Conference, 9 months pregnant, telling their story to a room full of lawyers, activists, and policymakers. "The system is supposed to protect the innocent," she concluded, "but sometimes the system becomes the weapon. And when that happens, ordinary people have to become extraordinary. They have to risk everything to do what's right. I was just a correctional officer who refused to look away, but that refusal changed everything." The audience stood and applauded. Backstage, Hyunjin waited with a bottle of water and a chair. "You did great," he said, helping her sit. "But maybe next time we wait until after the baby's born for public speaking events." Nicole laughed. "Deal." Their daughter was born 3 weeks later. They named her Hope, because after everything they'd been through, the darkness, the fear, the conspiracy, the near death, the destruction, hope was what had saved them. Hope that justice still mattered, hope that truth still won, hope that 2 people who met in the worst possible circumstances could build something beautiful together. And as Nicole held their newborn daughter, with Hyunjin's arm around her shoulders, she knew one thing for certain. She'd do it all again, every risk, every sacrifice, every terrifying moment. Because some things are worth fighting for, some people are worth saving. And sometimes the wrong number, the wrong transfer, the wrong circumstances lead you to exactly the right place. This is Nicole and Hyunjin's story, a story of courage, conspiracy, and a love that survived death row. If their journey moved you, if you believe in fighting for truth, even when it costs everything, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel for more powerful stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and what moment in their story touched you most. Share this video with someone who needs to remember that justice still matters, that one person can make a difference, and that love can bloom even in the darkest places. Thank you for being part of their journey. Thank you for believing with us that hope always wins in the end. Until next time, keep fighting for what's right. Keep believing in truth and keep hoping, even when hope seems impossible. Because as Nicole and Hyun-jin proved, miracles do happen. Sometimes you just have to be brave enough to fight for them.